Welcome to the chip market, where we help you invest smarter in the world of chips. The memory market has just staged one of the most incredible comebacks in recent history, and the engine behind it all is AI. So today we're breaking down Micron Technology, a key player right in the middle of this massive wave, to really understand what its future holds.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the huge rebound in the memory market. Then we'll get into HBM, which is basically Micron's engine for AI. After that, we'll size up the competition. It's really a three-player chess game. And finally, we'll put it all together to understand Micron's valuation going forward. Let's get started.
So let's kick things off with the big picture. To really understand what's happening with Micron, you have to appreciate just how dramatic this turnaround in the memory market has been. We're talking about a shift from a really brutal downturn to what looks like a record recovery.
And just look at this number. We're talking about a staggering plus 90%. That's what Micron is guiding for in its year-over-year revenue growth by late 2025. This isn't some slow, gradual climb. It's a vertical launch, really, just fueled by this incredible surge in demand and a huge rebound in prices.
In that revenue surge, it's completely flipped the script on the company's finances. I mean, think about it. They went from a staggering $5.8 billion loss in fiscal 2023 to a $778 million profit in 2024. Now sure, the memory business is famous for these wild swings, but this time really does feel different.
So that brings us to the core question here. Are we just looking at another classic boom and bust memory cycle? The kind we've seen a dozen times before. Or has AI permanently changed the rules of the game? I think the answer really starts with a specific kind of technology.
And that technology is HBM, or high bandwidth memory. This is really the key. It's not just Micron's engine for AI-driven growth, it might just be the catalyst that's creating a permanent, structural change for the entire industry.
Okay, so what exactly is HBM? Well, for starters, it is not your standard everyday DRAM. The best way to think about it is like a skyscraper made of memory chips. It's a really complex 3D stack design where you have multiple layers of DRAM all connected together. And the whole point of this architecture is to deliver a massive amount of data bandwidth, which is absolutely essential for feeding today's power-hungry AI processors.
And the size of the prize here is just immense. Right now, in 2024, the HBM market is about $16 billion. But the projections? They show it exploding to over $100 billion by 2030. That's not just incremental growth. That's a fundamental reshaping of the entire memory industry's value.
So how is Micron trying to grab a piece of this pie? Well, they're moving fast. They've already started volume production of their latest HBM3E product this year. They're also out there sampling even denser 36GB stacks to their top-tier AI customers. And their goal is very clear. They're targeting, in their words, multiple billions in HBM revenue for fiscal 2025. But of course, Micron isn't alone in this. They're not operating in a vacuum. The memory market is basically a consolidated oligopoly, which means it's a high-stakes chess match with really only three major players.
And here's what that looks like. You can see Micron is the number 3 player in the world, with about 22% of the DRAM market. The whole game is really dominated by two South Korean giants, SK hynix and Samsung. Between the two of them, they control more than 70% of the entire supply.
Now, if we zero in on HBM, that critical new segment, the dynamic is even sharper. SK hynix is the undisputed leader right now. They had a huge first-mover advantage, and they supply the memory for NVIDIA's H100 GPUs, which let them grab the lion's share of the market. Micron, on the other hand, is the challenger, but they're a serious one. They've basically caught up on the technology front with their HBM3E, and now their main focus is on getting qualified with those same top-tier AI customers.
So what does Micron have going for it in this fight? Well, they've got some real strengths. Technologically, they're actually a leader in advanced manufacturing, with their 1-beta process node already in high volume. And they're moving to the next big thing, EUV lithography, next year. But it's not just about cutting-edge tech. Their portfolio is pretty balanced, with a strong business in data center SSDs and those really stable, reliable automotive and industrial segments.
Okay, but it's not all smooth sailing. There are some significant headwinds to consider. First, as we mentioned, they're playing catch-up in HBM market share. Their NAND flash business is also a bit of a weak spot. It just doesn't have the scale of its rivals, which hurts during downturns. And then there's the geopolitical piece. Micron has been specifically targeted by a Chinese ban on its products being used in critical infrastructure.
So, you take all that,
The strengths, the weaknesses, the market dynamics. How do you put it all together into an actual investment framework? Well, that brings us to our final section, valuation and what the path forward looks like.
Okay, so our core thesis here is that the risk-reward balance for Micron actually looks pretty positive. And here's why. You have this powerful, structural, long-term demand coming from AI. And at the same time, it seems like the three big players are being more rational about adding new supply. Together, those two things should help soften the brutal downside risks that have always been part of the memory cycle.
Let's break that down into a few possible scenarios. In our base case, which assumes a healthy upcycle, we see the stock around a $100 price target. Now, if the AI boom really continues full steam ahead, the bull case could take it to $140. But what about the downside? Well, even in a bear case where spending slows down, the floor seems to be around $60. The big takeaway here is that the potential upside looks a lot bigger than the potential downside risk. So, what are the things to watch for in the near term that could really move the needle? Well, the big one, without a doubt, is getting a major design win for their HBM, getting qualified by a top-tier customer. That's paramount. Beyond that, you'll want to watch for continued strength in memory pricing and any signs of recovery in the PC and mobile markets. And don't forget the CHIPS Act's funding. That's a $6.1 billion grant that will seriously help lower the cost of their U.S. expansion, which is great for future profits. And all of this brings us right back to that central question we started with. Has AI permanently reshaped the memory cycle? Because if it has, if it's created a new, higher, and more stable floor for demand, then all the old models we used to value companies like Micron might need to be thrown out. The answer to that question is really going to define this entire industry for the next decade.
Look, this space moves incredibly fast, so staying on top of it is absolutely critical. If you got some value out of this breakdown, we'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, share it with someone who might be interested, and subscribe to The Chip Market for more insights. Thanks for watching.